Well, several communities are still cut off while others are dealing with the effects of this week's wild weather. It's posed more questions about climate adaptation and the state of the country's infrastructure. Joining us now for our political panel this week, National's Nicola Willis and Labour's Carmel Sepuloni. Welcome to you both.
Good to be on the show.
I might start with a couple of words that usually strike fear into the heart of politicians, and that is managed retreat. Who wants to go first?
Well, look, this is something that when the government was putting together the National Adaptation Framework, which we released last year, that there was actually a discussion across the Parliament about. And at that point, there was an agreement that this is something where no government should create a moral hazard whereby it says if everything looks difficult, the government will commit to completely buying out people and communities. Because what we need to incentivise is people actually managing risks now. That's not building in places where there will be floods and landslides. That's ensuring that we're not intensifying in those areas. It's letting insurance companies give signals about where they think there is greater risk and encouraging people to take some ownership of that.
It feels like it's still something that politicians, I mean this in general, don't really want to go there, because ultimately it is going to mean telling people that, hey, this town or this street is no longer viable.
Well, there are a number of actions to support the plan. So, for example, earlier this year, we issued national directives to local government about the hazard planning that they are now required to do, which is making sure that they are very clear about where there is going to be greater risk from rising sea levels, from flooding, from landslides, and then zoning accordingly. We're supporting the development of a national flood map so that everyone's actually working from the same information, which seems really basic, Corin, but actually that basic isn't in place right now.
Labour, what is their approach to this? Will you make this a priority, an issue that would dominate a next term if you were elected?
Well, we all know as political parties that we just simply can't ignore this. The weather events are getting more frequent, they're getting more serious, and all New Zealanders are seeing it. So I think it's very clear that we need to be having mature conversations, not just at the government level, but with council and with communities. Communities need to be involved in any conversations around things like managed retreat. It's also really important that we're not just reacting to each weather event that comes up. There does need to be a plan in place, and there's concern that that's not the case.
What does that plan look like?
We do need to be looking at resilience planning and funding. And so, we had a plan before that was scrapped by this government. And so it's important that for any future government that planning takes place.
But what is it actually, that resilience planning?
Well, you do need to have funding in place. We don't currently have that. It's done off the hoof. And so that's a concern for us. In terms of what our plan will be, well, we'll announce that closer to the election.
Corin, yesterday Chris Hipkins was asked whether he would reinstigate a ring-fenced resilience fund, and he neglected to confirm that he would. And so instead, the approach that our government has taken, and that I think Chris Hipkins probably can see some merit in, is we're building resilience into all of the infrastructure planning that we're doing. So, for example, NZTA now have a specific budget, hundreds of millions of dollars put aside for increasing the resilience of roads. That is, roads that are very prone to slips and floods, and ensuring that they're lifted and protected from those things. And we're going to have to integrate that into all of our infrastructure planning as we face into more climatic events.
And according to Chris Bishop, there's also a list of roads that they might not build again.
Well, yes, NZTA are doing planning to say, well, actually, where are the risks so great that we need to think about different routes? Which are the roads that actually we can fix with better culverts, lifting them, better protections in place? And how do we make sure that we're making sensible investment decisions rather than just rebuilding the same road lots of times? Well, this is work that the Infrastructure Commission has just done a big report on, and NZTA are, I think, pretty transparent about their planning. So when decisions are made, yes, we are happy to release that information.
The thing is, it doesn't feel like it's enough. You've got regions that are getting smashed. Not even just on an annual basis now, like sometimes it's monthly. You look at places like Gisborne, it's like how much more can they withstand here? And is there enough investment, and is there enough future-proofing and planning that's going on? And I think there are serious questions being asked about whether or not that is the case.
Okay, let's talk roads more specifically then, or part of the infrastructure issues that came up yesterday. Let's just get right to it. $9 road toll on both bridges. This would be the old bridge and the new bridge in Auckland. Nicola Willis, is that reasonable?
Well, I just want to be really clear that that is a completely hypothetical scenario in the Infrastructure Commission's plan. It's not something that the government has given consideration to. The challenge that all major political parties face is we've all committed that we need a second harbour crossing in Auckland. That is essential. That needs to be built, but it's going to cost billions and billions of dollars, and no one has put aside funding for that. So how do you pay for it? And what the experts and advisors always say is you should make sure that the users of roads are contributing the cost to them, and that's a road that would have so many vehicle movements a day that actually a toll to help pay for it would mean you could deliver it sooner.
We'll talk about the number at some point. Does Labor support a toll as well?
Not completely opposed to tolls, but they do need to be thought through very carefully. For someone like me who doesn't go over the harbour bridge very often, and perhaps is in a better position to be able to pay the $9, it's not a big deal. But for someone who's travelling over that bridge every day and going to work and perhaps not on the highest income, that becomes quite a big deal. And so what measures do you put in place to ensure that this is affordable and sustainable? The concern raised was also that it wouldn't raise enough money from the toll that has been proposed. And so that is a concern. But ultimately, I think for Labor, the fundamental thing here is what is affordable to New Zealanders. You know, they're under so much pressure with the cost of living right now. And so we need to make sure that any measure, including tolls, are fair and equitable.
The issue seems to be, though, that this user pays idea, because at the moment, Nicola Willis, the government's putting in a lot of money to transport that hasn't come from transport, so to speak. You aren't getting the money to cover it from the road taxes and that type of thing. That can't continue forever, because why should someone in Southland be subsidising Auckland's second bridge?
That's right. And as a shared concept, we used to have the concept that those who use the roads pay for them. And of course, that's a large part of what your petrol tax was meant to be about. But actually, in recent years, and it's both main political parties, have kept petrol taxes a bit lower, and that has meant that we've had to top up road funding from general taxation. Our government took a very deliberate choice to stop the petrol price increases that the last government had planned. We didn't think it was viable with the cost of living where it was, and that means that you end up having to top up the Land Transport Fund from general taxation. So there are questions of fairness, because, of course, New Zealand has many pressing infrastructure needs. We need to be building more hospitals,
now we've
more
got
schools.
all these roads that are planned, you know, the roads of national significance, if you like. But there's certainly no budget. There's not the amount of money required to be able to pay for the roads that have been proposed by this government. And so these are serious considerations moving forward. It's one thing to say this is the plan, these are the roads as a government that we are proposing. It's another thing to actually have the dollars to pay for it, and the government doesn't have the money to pay for it.
There was a little bit of a serve in this report, wasn't there, to the government's roads of national significance, saying the big flashy projects are too nice to have. We've got to focus on the smaller things, get them right. The roads of national significance, are they realistic now?
I wouldn't say it was a serve. I think the report makes a really good point, which I completely agree with, which is the non-sexy stuff, that is maintaining your existing assets well, is really important, because unless you do that, you end up having to replace them in the future. Well, that's exactly why the Infrastructure Commission has provoked the conversation about tolls in the future. If we want to have new roads which connect regions and cities and reduce people's commute to work and make us modern and make us a thriving, growing place, then we do need to consider how we fund that, because we can't just let go on the back burner some of the maintenance that's required. So we saw when we came to government that there were potholes absolutely everywhere because maintenance funding for roads had been cut. We sought to correct that, but it shouldn't be an on-off thing.
We got an 0800 road cones number, which has been shut down because that didn't work.
Pothole reduction has been a real success of this government.
Carmel, Sepuloni, what would be Labor's approach then to these roads of national significance? Would you scrap them? What would you do?
Well, we have to get the right balance between roading and rail. One of the things I'm really interested in is, I think in the coalition agreement, they did have a plan for rail to Northland and getting some of the trucks off the roads. That doesn't seem to be happening, but of course we know the damage that trucks do to our roads. And so rail's really important in this equation too. And we haven't seen that much of a focus by this government on that. It can't be just about the roads. And if we want to do something about the cost of maintenance with our roads, then we need to do something about getting the trucks off them.
Let's finish with some just comments about food prices and inflation. Nicola Willis, inflation's outside the band at the moment. You don't have to give us your opinion on the Reserve Bank's decision today because you can't. But food prices up as well, reversing a little bit of a trend there, or a downward trend. Why are we seeing inflationary pressures in this economy so soon? I mean, we've only barely got a recovery, and yet we're already hearing about the brakes being slammed on.
Well, on food prices, it is the case that they always spike in January, and it's also the case that international factors have had a bearing on food prices. But I think we've got to put this in context. When we came to office, food price inflation was still up at 6%, so it's well down from
but I'm
those
talking about the
levels.
here and now, and isn't the issue that your government hasn't given or provided the productivity boost that is needed to allow the economy to grow at a speed where it's not inflationary?
Well, no, I don't think that is the case. I think that the recovery has been more challenging than many people hoped it would be. Actually, the investment boost tax policy is the most productivity-enhancing thing a government has done, arguably, in years, in terms of the official advice that will improve productivity. Reducing red tape, getting fast-tracked projects, that's very good for productivity. Ensuring that you've got better educated
But it's not
kids,
working
that's
yet.
great for productivity. Well, I guess this is my kind of view of government, is do you not do things because they don't deliver tomorrow, or do you acknowledge long-standing issues that need to be addressed, and do you get on and start addressing them? And that's been the approach of our government. Yes, fix the basics, but also build for the future, and don't pretend that delivers
Carmel,
tomorrow.
Sepuloni, the issue of productivity, of getting the economy's speed limit up so that it can actually grow at a decent clip without just creating inflation. Give me a couple of policies that Labor will do to achieve this.
I'm not going to throw policies out there.
Because you never do, Carmel, because you don't have any. It's a theme. It's a running
we've been
theme.
very clear. We actually need to see what the government puts on the table at the next budget to understand how much money is going to be left in the coffers, to have an understanding for what we could actually turn around or turn over. And we're not going to make promises that are not credible or lack integrity.
I think it lacks integrity to say it'll be better and not have a plan.
They
for
lack
how.
integrity because they came in before the last election saying that they were going to fix the cost of living crisis for New Zealanders. They were going to provide relief to all those families. That simply hasn't been the case. And I think we've seen like the highest spike in inflation on food in the last 4 years under this government. And so, also just want to reflect on something Nicola said. She said that inflation on food is partially due to what's happening internationally. Well, she didn't recognise that when we were in, and inflation was going up internationally because of the global pandemic and everything else.
We're going to leave it there.
So very important.
Thank you very much, both of you. That is our political panel, Nicola Willis and Carmel Sepuloni from National and Labor. We appreciate your time as always.